So we've been to England and we've been to Spain, and now this week we head over to Italy for St. Francis of Assisi. Now, this is St. Francis is probably one of the most famous and probably name recognition saints there are in the history of Christianity. Now, it's not the same St. Francis that the Catholic Church down the street is named after. That's St. Francis Xavier. This is St. Francis of Assisi. He lived in the late 1100s, early 1200s, mostly in Italy. And Francis was born to a wealthy family. His biographies talk about how people thought he was witty and funny and fun to be around and very well dressed and a very charming and handsome young man. But I would be willing to bet most of the pictures you've seen of him, most of the paintings you've seen of him, most of the statues that you've seen of him, he's not very well dressed. In fact, he's very plainly dressed. He's in a robe usually with a rope around his waist. Doesn't seem very fancy. And there's a reason for that. Francis had a religious experience when in his younger life that made him start to question what it meant to have riches in the world. And was it right for someone to hold on to their riches? Was it right for someone to have more money than somebody else? Is it right to hold up your wealth if other people are suffering? And he begins to go on a sort of religious pilgrimage. Now, you can read all about this pilgrimage, but I'll cut to the end of it because he ends up in St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican now, and he is praying there. And while he's praying there, an icon, a painting of Christ, he says, speaks to him. He says a literal painting of Christ began to talk to him. And it says something like, "Francis, can't you see that my house is in shambles and it needs help being rebuilt?" And Francis actually took this literally. He looked around, he looked at St. Peter's Basilica, he looked around Rome, he looked around where he was, and he thought, yeah, the church doesn't look too good. This building doesn't look too good. Maybe I can do something about it. So he goes, he sells his fancy clothes. He starts raising money. He starts giving away his possessions and selling them for the sole purpose of rebuilding up these churches where he was in Rome. Now you can imagine that his very wealthy father did not like this too much. So the story goes from there that Francis actually hides out in a cave for a while away from his father. While he's there, he begins to have deeper religious and spiritual instances in his life, experiences in his life. He does things like goes out with the poor outside of Rome and begs with them for food and for money to see what it's like to be poor. And in this, he takes a vow of poverty. He becomes a very religious monk and another mystic. That's a name that keeps, or that's a term that keeps coming up in what we talk about. Francis would go on to create 3 new orders of religious life. He goes and creates a new order of monkhood for men, a new order of nuns for women, and then he actually, it's called the Third Order of St. Francis. It's for people who felt some sort of religious calling or some sort of religious attitude, but did not want to leave their homes and instead wanted to continue to live the life that they had. So they call it the Secular Order of St. Francis. People all over the world still hold to these orders. Now, of course, they've been reformed. It's been 800, 900 years since they were originally formed. But St. Francis's work cannot be underestimated in what Christianity is today. In the way that he went out and formed these new orders and talked about works of piety, talks about the need to take care of the poor and the need to take care of nature. Francis would actually say that nature is the mirror to God, God's self. You might know the story where he talks about going and preaching to the birds. There's also this really great story, and I showed a picture of it at the beginning of this video, of how he was apparently so well in his ability to commune with nature that there was this wolf that was bothering a village. And Francis goes out and somehow convinces the wolf to stop bothering people in this village on the condition that they too will maybe give some food to this wolf. Francis wrote a lot of poetry, a lot of songs, and a lot of prayers. Most of the readings that I have for you today are one of those, and they're relatively short. And then there's also the sermon where he talks about preaching to the birds. St. Francis of Assisi is, like I said, very popular. In riding my bike around my neighborhood, I see at least 2 or 3 statues of him in people's gardens. And the reason why those became so popular is because of his connection to nature and his understanding that God works in the natural world, even outside of humanity. That God isn't just the God of humans, but God is the God of all creation. I hope you enjoy reading his writings today.